Website performance is something that SEOs, Google Ad Managers, web developers are really starting to focus a lot of their attention on. And I'm going to show you in this video exactly how to improve your SEO, your Google Ads performance, and your web design by improving the performance of your website. My name is Brody Shepherd. I'm the owner of Site Center here in Australia, and we're going to cover pretty much everything there is, not exactly how to, I'll cover that in another video, but everything that you need to know to be able to analyze your website correctly and things to implement to give you instant results. So I'm going to use one of our clients as an example, Sunchenko's Pest Control, based in our area. Thought it was quite an easy client to use. So this is one we've already done, and I'll show you the difference between this and another site and why it's so important to focus on the performance of your website. So there are a few tools you could use. There's hundreds out there. We use a set amount of tools because they're the ones that we recommend. They're the ones that we've used for ages, and we know that they provide accurate answers. But comparing against other tools is really important as well because each tool has their own individual features. So GT Metrics is the first one. You would have heard of it before if you're in the optimization industry or web development industry. So there's a few misconceptions on what you're trying to focus on here and trying to improve your website's performance. It is not this fully loaded time. So you'll commonly find a website that has a 12, 13, 14 second load time. Now, that seems bad. It's not necessarily as bad as what it may actually be. There are indicators and things that come into place when developing a website, like Google Analytics, Facebook pixels, Instagram pixels, LinkedIn pixels, things that trigger after a website is fully loaded, but contribute to your overall load time. So your actual focus isn't this time. I highly recommend creating an account. It's the only way to actually gain proper information about what your actual load time is. So create an account. It's absolutely free to do. Select your local area or where your demographic is. So the closest server to your demographic, depending on where you are in the world, will depend on what the speed is. So always pick the demographical target, and that's, in this instance, is Sydney, Australia. So first off, you'll notice a few warnings on any website, and the idea isn't to have these at 100 and 100. The idea is to reduce the first contentful paint. You can work that out by firstly running a test and going to timings. So in this timings, you've got a graph or a story that is told throughout the website's load. So your first time to buy it is your TTFB. That is something that you really want under 200 milliseconds. So depending on where you are, Australia is really difficult to get under 200 milliseconds. Overseas in America, you can get that to 30 or 40. So depending on your server location will really depend on this first TTFB. The target you're actually going for though is this contentful paint. So Contentful paint, as described here, the first contentful paint is triggered when the content is painted, something defined in the DOM, document object model. This could be text, an image, or canvas render. So this is pretty much the point in where the website's visually displayed and you can engage with the website, you can interact with the website. So this is the point in which Google care about, this is the point in which the user is going to be able to interact with the site. So this is the number that you're looking for. And this number is across all the different testing tools, and it tells a different story to what your fully loaded time would tell. You can also find that time in the waterfall by hovering over these different elements. So you can see here is the first paint here, and then these things are loaded after. So Google Analytics, the manifest, and the favicon. These are things that aren't required for the website to be loaded and that are not visually seen on website load, are loaded slightly after the page is finished. So Google Analytics is something that you don't need to be active when the page is fully loaded. So it can load after. And in optimization, it's important to make sure that scripts are defined by what is required before loading and what is required after loading. So your needs and your wants. So you need these scripts you want these. So defining that is very important. Moving over to Google's official PageSpeed Insights or Lighthouse is this tool here. So it tests both the mobile and the desktop experience. And once again, this first contentful paint is defined within here. You'll also see where the delays could possibly be and some improvements that you could possibly make. And I'll cover what the most important things to improve are at the end of the video. So you've got your mobile and your desktop. You typically want your mobile above 80 and your desktop above 90. And this tells a very similar story to the 0.5 seconds that GT metrics told as well. So keep in mind that testing will, if I retest this now, it could display completely different tests. I recommend running 10 and getting your average over those 10. Yellow Labs is another great tool that helps identify where the issue is, not necessarily the time of load. So it'll identify key things to focus on to help improve your website's performance, not just the time itself. So a lot of those will be JavaScript related, but image compression, gzipping, things like that can really come into place. Typically using Bootstrap as a framework on your website, you'll typically notice a poorer performance in the CSS side. You can optimize that and get that up as well. Pingdom, a tool that goes way back. It seems to not provide as much value as the newer tools, but a great way to compare against what other tools are saying as well. Uptrends. So because you're wanting to load from a server closest to your target demographic, this helps you identify what the delay is from where your server is versus the user might be. So obviously Sydney is where the server is. It's near an instant download time. And as you get further along and further server locations such as Beijing, they're quite far away. There's a lot of servers interactions that need to happen before hitting a Sydney-based server. So you'll find that those are really slow. So when testing and you have, say, an international business, you really want to test where your target demographic is versus your primary audience and make sure that the primary audience is a focus here and making sure that the best average across all your audiences is met. I've got another website that I'll use as a comparison. So this website here, its actual load time is near on instant. However, reports will say a completely different story. So if we compare it against this one, you'll see that the first load time is actually really good, or your first Contentful Paint is really good, but the actual overall load time is poor. The main reason for that is this YouTube video that loads in the background. It's something that's loaded after the page is finished loading, so you can do a refresh, the page will load very quickly. However, the video will trigger after, so it's more impacted after. But GT metrics and PageSpeed Insights will tell a completely different story. So the first Contentful Paint is actually quicker than the other site. So the other site was 2 seconds, this is 1.9, and for the desktop it's 0.6, so 1.1 behind. However, it is giving slower speeds. So the speed that is provided in, say, GT metrics of 4.9 seconds isn't necessarily telling the full story. 6 meg isn't telling the full story either, because that's including the video's load time. Now, if we look at the timings, you can see that the first Contentful Paint is 0.8 seconds with a first byte of 57 milliseconds, which is extremely quick. So the page actually loads very quickly, but you can see all these video files are loaded after. So using these tools is fantastic and all, but make sure that you're using the right numbers and measuring based on the correct numbers, because this number can be 20 seconds. It really doesn't matter, and it won't impact the user's interaction nor your SEO performance. There are other tools that come in useful, like Batspeed. Batspeed is pretty much a copy of GT metrics. However, you enter your homepage, it'll test 20 URLs or pages on your website, and it can help you identify if 1 or 2 pages in particular are causing worse speeds than others. So you can see that these are all fairly comparable to each other, and if you did have a standout number that's in its 40s or 50s, you would then identify what the problem on that page is, whether it be maybe a dead image or something that's gone wrong, a script that's being executed that really doesn't need to be loaded before the page is loaded. Other things that you could do to improve the performance of a website, and probably the most important things to do, is image optimization. There's a few options for that, and one of which is ImageKit. ImageKit serves the latest image models, so .webp, which is a Google initiative. Highly recommended you use ImageKit, or at least go to the effort of using WebP formats. There are a bunch of ways to make this happen. So they're files that are way smaller than PNGs or JPEGs, and it allows you to dynamically do that. So it's a very small install. You would replace your existing URL with their URL. It acts as a CDN, so serves the content from a content distribution network closest to where your user is being connected to. So it'll help you diagnose if there are any improvements that could be made for those images and how it could actually improve those images. So testing on a tool like this can help you identify that from both a desktop and a mobile perspective. They're all both handled very similarly, and it's just important to make sure that you are doing that. If you want to go down the route of doing your own optimization, we recommend two tools, Kraken and TinyPNG, both of which you can compress your images significantly without losing any resolution, any quality, and yet have a significantly smaller picture, as you can see in their examples. It's highly recommended that you use image compression on every single image that you show online. There's a lot of data that's kept in images, such as your metadata, what programs you've used to edit the file, what camera it was taken on, the physical location, the time and date, sometimes the publisher, information that isn't necessarily required for online publishing but is stored in the back of the image. And this will basically remove that data and help you compress the image and serve it at a smaller size than what you're currently serving it. Both of these tools are free. They do have their paid options. 100% worth it in my opinion. I've got an account on both. Very affordable. TinyPNG seems to be a little bit better in my opinion, but it is limited a little bit more than what Kraken is. So every image uploaded, use one of these two tools. The other option is using Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a content distribution network that also helps you with your security of your website. So it's sort of offers two great features there. Security is not one we'll cover in this video, but offers a really great tool that is free of charge for nearly everyone that I've ever spoken to. But if you do get into your enterprise or corporate businesses, you may want to look into their paid options. So basic configuration that we use for Cloudflare is your full SSL certificate. Always use HTTPS. It'll set to anyone trying to connect to the website that isn't using a HTTPS to automatically use the strict version and automatically rewrite your URL. So if you have a link in your website that isn't linking to a HTTPS version, it'll rewrite that dynamically for you. In terms of your firewall, you can set it to whatever. We typically go medium or low for our security level. High is a little bit strict, and essentially off takes away that whole security feature of Cloudflare, which it's a great tool, so we may as well utilize it. In terms of our optimization settings, we use JavaScript, CSS, and HTML compression. Bratelli is a great feature for improving the speed from your HTTPS requests. And we tend to leave off Rocket Loader. It does seem to work on WordPress a little bit better than custom builds. So if you are using WordPress, have a look at that. However, it can cause some issues on scripts. So definitely test after using Rocket Loader. From there, we go to caching. And here's where the configuration becomes a little bit abnormal to what you would typically see. For our browser caching, request existing headers. So we do this so we can utilize another feature of Cloudflare, which we'll run into in a second. We're currently in development mode. That turns off after a couple of hours. I think it's 3 or 4 hours. It'll automatically turn off. And for our page rules where the setting comes into place, you would set your full URL. If you use www, include the www. If not, then remove it with an asterisk behind. That means every page as well as the home page will be included within this. And focus on the browser cache TTL. We set it to a year, which is their maximum. You can set it to whatever you want. Caching level, you want to cache everything. So this isn't actually available in their caching tab. It's only available within the page rules. So this will actually cache a version of the page, so your requests aren't being made. So in website development, you'll have typically a database, and in WordPress, you've definitely got a database. It will try and grab that website every single time you load it. So it'll grab your settings, it'll grab the files, it'll grab everything that it's trying to associate to a database request and load it. What this is doing is essentially loading a static page. No database request, it's loading it locally from the Cloudflare servers, so you can bring that TT you can bring your TTFB down to 57 milliseconds opposed to the 200 milliseconds. So you can definitely make improvements by doing cache because you're not doing server-side requests. We also set our custom cache to and our edge cache to pretty much an infinite or as long as we possibly can, and we used the deception armor and origin cache controls. So these are a little bit abnormal to what you'll find online, but it definitely makes a big improvement to your load time. Under networking, we sometimes enable or disable, depending on the client, the IP geolocation. It does tend to slow down the performance just that little bit, so if they're not using the feature, make sure you're turning it off. It is by default turned on. Make sure that you're also using the HTTP3 requests and the ORTT requests. If you do have a paid account, we strongly recommend going back to speed and turning on your HTTP2 requests, your polish, your image resizing, but your enforced HTTP2 prioritizations. That'll make a huge performance improvement. And if you are wanting to spend a little bit of money, it would be also advised to enable Argo, which we tend to find has a pretty good performance improvement. However, it depends on a client-to-client basis. If you're a personal site, highly recommend using it. For clients, we don't tend to use it though. And from there, that's pretty much the cover of performance optimization of a website. Make sure that you're covering your images, you're compressing images, you're compressing your CSS files. There are a bunch of tools available online for free for most of the performance improvers. If you're using large CSS files, too many CSS files, look to compress those into one larger file, or at least what's prioritized as the most important CSS, use on-page CSS, not external CSS. We also recommend using localization services such as your Cloudflare and CDN services to load the files closest to where your target demographic is, especially if you don't have the option of hosting locally to your clients. Another one of our recommendations is bad requests. So if you've got a 404 page or an error in an image load, so the image isn't loading correctly, it can't be found or it's been deleted, so forth, that can cause delays as well. So make sure that you've got no 404s on your page. JavaScript, make sure that all the scripts that are required to be loaded are only required, and everything else that is not required to be loaded after page load. Load everything after page load. If it's analytical, or it's replacing certain things, loading videos, try and load those after the page is completed load to get that Contentful Paint down. And make sure that you're not connecting to too many domains concurrently. So in our source code, we've compressed all the source code, but typically you want to load from 1 to 2, maybe 3 URLs. So in this instance, we're loading from ImageKit, which is the CDN, and our own domain. So anything that's loaded from the domain name itself, that you can't avoid. You do want to load from a CDN where possible, And of course, we have Google Analytics. So we want to trigger Google Analytics as soon as possible. However, we still async, which is pushing the data loading behind. So we're loading from 3 different URLs in this instance. Now, Google will try and request from other URLs, and scripts will try and connect to other URLs as well. So focus on removing those unnecessary requests to URLs that aren't being used. And that pretty much sums it up. If there are any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll reply to each and every question in the comments. If you wouldn't mind leaving a comment, a like, and subscribing to our channel, that goes a long way. We will be making a lot more videos on how to optimize a website, a step-by-step guide. Going through WordPress, we typically don't use WordPress, we're not a big fan, but we do understand that it is a commonly used application, and that's where the majority of viewers are going to be on a WordPress site. So if there are any questions, let us know, and thanks for watching.